All right, welcome to another episode of Wild Sarasota. You'll definitely want to stick around for this one because we're going to be talking about Florida's venomous snakes. My name is Zahir Ringgold, and I'm the Environmental Education and Outreach Program Assistant at UF IFAS Extension, Sarasota County, on the Ecology and Natural Resources team. To give you a little bit more information about who we are, UF IFAS Extension Sarasota County is a partnership between the Land Grant Research University, the University of Florida, the U.S. Department of Agriculture, and Sarasota County government. There's an extension office in every county here in Florida, and nationwide, there are different extension programs in partnership with local land grant research universities and local government. What we do here at Extension is we try to extend the research and resources from the University of Florida out into our community. And we do this through a variety of educational programs, classes, family and youth events, workshops, really, you name it. And we cover various different program areas. We really try to meet the diverse needs of our community. So those include agriculture, community development and sustainability, gardening and landscaping, natural resources and ecology, nutrition and healthy living, and youth development through our 4-H program. On the ecology and natural resources team, we really try to educate and empower citizens by promoting awareness of our diverse natural resources, because I don't know about you, but I'm so lucky to live here in Sarasota County where we have so many beautiful natural areas, so many beautiful parks and preserves, and so much spectacular wildlife. So we really want to foster connections between people and our beautiful natural areas and wildlife, but we also want to inspire people to get involved in conservation of our natural resources and our unique and vulnerable ecosystems and wildlife. So we provide a variety of environmental education programs for youth and adults, outdoor recreation programs, and we also share about the health benefits of spending time in nature. So if you ever have a wildlife question or a concern or issue, feel free to email us, to give us a call, to send us a picture of your questions or concerns, and we'll try to help you out. All right, so today, very interesting and fascinating, important topic, Florida snakes. How many native snakes do we have? You'll see different numbers. You might see 44, you might see 50. We are going to go with around 46 native species of snakes. Most of them are non-venomous, and in fact, only 6 species statewide that are native to Florida are venomous, okay? So several species of non-venomous snakes or non-native snakes can also be found here in Florida. So if you've ever heard of the Burmese python, that's one of those non-native or invasive species that are commonly talked about because of the impacts that they're having in our natural areas. As far as our longest native snake, because Burmese pythons get really, really long, but our native snake that's the longest is actually the eastern indigo snake. It's a threatened species. It's pictured here on this slide, and they get to around 8 feet long. Snakes have a really important role in Florida's ecosystems and really around the world, both venomous and non-venomous species. They are natural population control for rodents, insects, and other small reptiles and amphibians, animals who produce or reproduce in vast numbers. Nature sort of works cohesively with different types of predators to help control those populations. And that includes non-native and invasive species. So some snakes will even eat those animals that are further causing negative impacts in our ecosystems. Snakes also serve as prey for many other animals. If you've ever had the interesting experience of seeing a great blue heron wrestling with a snake, I've definitely seen snakes wrapping around great blue heron's beak while that great blue heron is trying to get its next meal. So a variety of other animals will eat snakes as well. Other snakes will also eat venomous species sometimes too. And snakes in Florida are going to inhabit a wide variety of our ecosystems and habitats, from our aquatic environments to forests and scrublands, urban and suburban areas, islands. They can be found really all over in Florida. So what we're going to do today is we're going to go through the 6 species of venomous snakes and their lookalikes. We're going to talk about venomous snake encounters, what you should do. We'll get into what snake bites are like, some of the types of venom, and then how to deal with them. And then we'll get into snake safety and prevention of any negative interactions. So I know this topic can be challenging and can feel quite scary. It's really, really important to have this information because you can use what you learn in presentations like this one and other resources to reduce your likelihood of having negative encounters and interactions with our venomous snake species. So Florida's venomous snakes, as I mentioned before, there are 6 species of venomous snakes in Florida that can potentially pose a threat to humans. Out of four out of those 6 are found in Sarasota County. And then something really common that people will sort of confuse is what is the difference between being venomous or poisonous? So venomous animals, they produce a toxin that is injected into the body. So that can be through a bite or a sting. Poisonous animals produce toxins that are ingested or absorbed into the body through skin, through eating, through inhaling. So that's, for example, an amphibian, like the cane toad, for example, who, when you hold it or when animals eat it, they are poisoned by the toxins that it produces. It doesn't bite them or sting them to inject those toxins like a snake or a bee or wasp, okay? So our different venomous species are going to be the copperhead, which is found primarily along the Apalachicola River and western parts of the Panhandle, the timber rattlesnake, which is found in parts of North Florida and the Panhandle, the eastern diamondback rattlesnake, the dusky pygmy rattlesnake, the cottonmouth, or sometimes you'll hear it called the water moccasin, and the coral snake. The 4 species in red are found in Sarasota County. The 2 are not. The 2 at the top in orange. So here are some pictures of those 6 venomous species. Top left, we have the Florida cottonmouth or water moccasin. Middle on the top, we have the dusky pygmy rattlesnake. On the far right in the top, we have the copperhead. Bottom left, we have the eastern diamondback rattlesnake. Middle on the bottom, we have the coral snake. And bottom far right, we have the timber rattlesnake. So one thing that's important to note is that there are certain characteristics that you can use to help you figure out if a species is venomous or non-venomous. Now, not all animals, because it's nature, not everything is going to fit into neat little boxes. Some things will have variations, some will be different. Some rules or characteristics will not apply to some species. And then here in Florida, amongst our venomous species, we have 2 different groups. So characteristics that we would use to identify venomous species in one group will not apply to the second group. Okay, so here in Florida, we have pit vipers and one elapid that's venomous. Our pit vipers are going to be the copperhead, cottonmouth, timber rattlesnake, dusky pygmy rattlesnake, and the eastern diamondback rattlesnake. Okay, so that is 5 out of our 6 venomous species that belong to the pit vipers subfamily. So it is a subfamily of the Viperidae family. They generally are going to have long, hinged, hollow fangs or retractable fangs that they can fold in when their mouth is closed. They've got a big, blocky, triangular head shape caused by those venom glands in their mouth. And so when I say a blocky, triangular head shape, what that means is you're going to see more distinction between that snake's head and its neck and body. Okay, so sort of a big triangular head that will then go into that neck and long body. They may also have keeled scales, though non-venomous species may have keeled scales as well. And what that means is if you take a look at the picture on the right here, you see that there's kind of a line running down the middle of those scales, just like the keel on the bottom of a boat. That gives the snake sort of a textured, sort of rough appearance as opposed to a smooth, shiny, sleek appearance, okay? So that's what keeled scales are. They may also have vertically elliptical pupils, so those typical cat eye pupils. They may have, for our pit vipers, they're called pit vipers because they have heat-sensing pits on either side of their faces, and we'll look at those in just a few moments. And then many of the species will have a characteristic dark band going from their eye towards the corner of their jaw or alongside their head, except for copperheads. They do not have that characteristic band. And then they'll have a stout body. What that means is that instead of being proportionally long and slender, they're going to be thick, heavy bodied, and they'll kind of look a little bit short. So even if the snake is really long, its body is going to be really thick, stout, heavy, instead of being long and slender. Now let's get into our elapid. Our only venomous elapid here in Florida is the coral snake. It belongs to the Elapidae family, which is shared with cobras, mambas, kraits, sea snakes, and more. Those are some of the most venomous species in the entire world. So if you ever heard of the black mamba or the inland taipan, those are highly venomous species of snakes, and they belong to the same family as our coral snake. We only have one species of coral snake here in Florida, but there are other species of coral snakes in some of our surrounding states and in the United States and other countries as well. They have short fixed fangs. So instead of being able to retract their fangs, so having long fangs that can penetrate deeply like our pit vipers, they have short fixed fangs that are going to have to fit in their mouth when their mouth is closed. Okay, so that means that they're not going to be able to easily penetrate deeply when they bite, which is kind of a plus for us. You may hear people say that they have to bite and hold on to and chew their prey before they release venom. While generally they do need to do that, they can release venom quickly. So it is not safe to assume that just because a coral snake didn't bite and hold on and chew that it didn't release any venom. And their venom is neurotoxic, so it impacts the nervous system. All right, so our pit vipers, their heat sensing capabilities, really amazing adaptation. Take a look at those sort of pits in their face. So in the top snake, it's in between their eye and their nose. And then on the snake on the bottom, they've got more than just two heat sensing pits. And in the top picture, you can really see that elliptical cat eye in this species and that thick, sort of blocky triangular head. So those heat sensing pits are very sensitive. They can pick up small changes in heat in the environment around them. What that's going to help them do is to locate warm-blooded mammals during nighttime. Okay, so it's going to be more effective in climates where there's more of a difference between the blood or the warmth coming off of that animal versus the ambient surrounding temperature. But even here in Florida, where we get some really hot temperatures, it is still effective. And this is kind of what it looks like. So it's not that they're seeing infrared light, it's more that they're picking up those heat signatures and that's sort of being transmitted or translated by their brain, as opposed to seeing heat with their eyes.
The rat won't see the snake unless it moves, whereas the viper is thought to use both eyesight and heat vision in a single view. It seems the dice are well and truly loaded.
All right, so that is a great adaptation if you are hunting nocturnally. Okay, so we'll get into some photos and a little bit of information about each of our pit vipers now. First up is the eastern copperhead. So copperhead is found again primarily along the Apalachicola River and western parts of the Panhandle. It is not found in Sarasota County. It's going to be around 22 to 36 inches in length. It's got that characteristic stout body, those keeled scales that give it sort of a textured look. And this snake has a very light tan colored body with hourglass shaped light and dark brown crossbands going down its body. It does not have that typical dark band from its eye to its jaw or alongside its head as seen in other pit vipers. So the head of this snake in this picture is on the left side of the photo, right below that venomous sign. And you can see how it does not have that dark band there on its head. And take a look at this picture. If you weren't looking for a snake and you were in an area where there were copperheads, look at how well it camouflages with the leaf litter. Okay, so instead of rattling, this species does not have a rattle, or sometimes even instead of moving away, this snake is going to freeze and rely on stillness and camouflage when frightened. This is great for the snake because it can blend in or camouflage quite well. Not as great for people so much because sometimes you may miss seeing that you are closer than you'd like to be to this snake because it is very still. I've seen many copperheads in other areas that I've been in and haven't even noticed them. And I've almost stepped on one before and it was just still, it didn't move away. It was right there trying to remain concealed and hidden. So that is kind of tricky sometimes when we're thinking about wanting to keep as much distance as possible between us and a snake. They can be found in upland pine and hardwood forests, forested areas near wet areas bordering swamps and riverbeds. And then in this species, and some other species as well, the tail tip of juveniles is going to be a bright yellow color. Some have said that there is some evidence that they might use that tail, that bright yellow tail, as kind of like a lure to attract prey. So it'll look like a little worm or a caterpillar. Next up is our timber rattlesnake. This is a snake that is found in parts of North Florida and the Panhandle. It is not found in Sarasota County. It's around 30 to 60 inches in length. That is a big, heavy-bodied snake, big head. It's very thick. I think it's a really beautiful snake as well, but it's got this black, zigzaggy sort of chevron-shaped crossbands that go down its body. Its tail ends in black and its rattle. And then it's got this sort of coppery, reddish brown stripe that goes all the way down the length of its back. And then its body color is generally going to be this light gray color or tannish color. You take a look at this snake's head, it does have that characteristic dark band going down the side of its face. And it has very easy to see distinction between the head and the neck. So thick head goes into a narrower neck. It's going to be found in damp lowlands, riverbeds, swamps, thickets. Sometimes the snake is called the canebrake rattlesnake because it can be found in cane thickets, hardwood hammocks, pine flatwoods, and again, forests near wet areas that are bordering swamps and riverbeds. Some fun facts, and other snakes will do this too, but males will engage in a combat dance to compete for females. So they'll kind of be sort of going head to head. They might wrap around each other. It's quite interesting to see. And then according to the Florida Museum, this species has actually been observed climbing really high into trees, which generally you don't really think of rattlesnakes as doing that. We do have many species of arboreal snakes that are non-venomous, but with this species in particular, it's been seen in trees. All right. Eastern diamondback rattlesnake. This is one of our first species that is found in Sarasota County that we're discussing today. And this snake is found in all counties in Florida, including many keys and islands. It is widely distributed. It is very common to see this snake. People often, I think in times when I've done community programs, I've heard many people say that they've seen them in sort of suburban areas as well. So we'll spend more time on this one because it is more common to see than some of our other venomous species. So it's going to be around 3 to 6 feet long on average, and sometimes even up to 8 feet. It's quite a large snake. Heavy-bodied, stout with dark brown, black, and cream-colored diamond-shaped pattern that goes along its back, which it's named for. So that's pretty helpful, very characteristic identification feature. They really have those keeled scales that give them that textured appearance, and they do have that black band going down from their along the side of their head. And the tail, of course, ends in a rattle. So most of their habitats are going to be sort of dry areas that don't get flooded as much. So our pine lands, and they can really, because they're found in so many different areas, they can be found in areas that are going to get some seasonal water, but mostly pine lands, flatwoods, scrub, which is some of our most dry habitat and higher elevation, golf courses, suburban areas, barrier islands. Those are all some potential areas that they can be found in. Palmetto thickets as well, so areas where there's dense palmetto stands where you can't really see the ground so much. And then they're going to actually utilize gopher tortoise burrows. They are a commensal species that will utilize gopher tortoise burrows. They don't eat the tortoises. but there's actually over 350 different species of animals in the state of Florida that utilize gopher tortoise burrows as well. If you're not familiar with this really awesome animal, it is very important keystone species in our ecosystems here and digs these extensive burrows that provide habitat and shelter for many other animals. All right, so let's take a look at these pictures. One thing I want to note is that that diamond back pattern really breaks up the sort of silhouette or outline of a rattlesnake's body. And what that does is it increases camouflage. So instead of being all one uniform color that is easy to distinguish from its surrounding environment, that broken up sort of pattern helps it to camouflage and blend in more and be less visible. And you can kind of see that in this picture of this snake in the grass. And then we can listen to what its rattle sounds like too. All right, so really unique adaptation. Um, rattle, the rattle is not always heard before a snake strikes. So sometimes there can kind of be these cultural stories and myths passed around that a rattlesnake can't strike without rattling first. Not the case. So you still want to be careful and use preventative measures to avoid those interactions. They're going to shed their teeth around every 6 to 10 weeks. So they do get new teeth, new fangs, and they can strike up to 2/3 the distance of their body. Okay, so a 6-foot snake potentially could strike something that is 4 feet away. That is a really important fact to know because that kind of tells you how far away you need to keep from a snake potentially, especially if it's a rattlesnake, to avoid potentially being bitten. They are actually the largest venomous snake in the United States and the largest rattlesnake in the entire world. So they're going to eat larger rodents, rabbits, squirrels, birds. They're going to be able to take a little bit larger prey than just our smaller mice. Here is an image of an eastern diamondback rattlesnake after a meal. So snakes eat their prey, they swallow it whole, they don't chew it up, and then it's going to take a few days for that prey to be digested. So when snakes are digesting, because they can't move around as fast, they're kind of bogged down by having this, huge animal inside of their body. They're going to want to find a place that is safe and sheltered to digest their food. And then we'll look at two animals that can potentially be confused with eastern diamondback rattlesnakes. They are different. They're going to be much longer. The Burmese python and the African rock python going to grow much larger and longer than the eastern diamondback rattlesnake. But the reason why I have them here as potential lookalikes, and they are both non-native or invasive species, is because they have sort of brown, tan, black, cream, blotchy pattern on them, which with a quick glance could potentially be confused with an eastern diamondback rattlesnake. So speaking of those non-native and invasive species, it's important if you do see non-native or invasive snakes to report them. The Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission has the I've Got One program where you can report through an app, you can call, you can use the website, you can email to let them know that you've seen a non-native or invasive species. That really helps them to track the spread of those species and how they're going to potentially impact our ecosystems. If you've heard anything about the Burmese python, you know how devastating a non-native or an invasive species can be on our ecosystems. And in the Everglades, Burmese pythons, because they don't have natural predators here, they don't come from Florida, they have been able to significantly lower populations of native mammals because they're eating so many of them and nothing is controlling their population naturally, right? So that also sort of brings me to talking about snakes as pets. If you want a snake as a pet, it is really important to note first that you're not taking snakes out of the wild, but your snake is going to need very specific care. They are ectothermic reptiles. They need to bask. They need UV light. They need adequate space in their enclosure. They need specific foods. So some snakes do not eat frozen mice. Some snakes are going to require live mice to be purchased for them every week or every other week. Okay, so there's a lot that goes into caring for a snake properly, and they can live around 20 years in captivity. Okay, so it's really, really important to think about those things, and especially if you have a child who wants a snake, to think about that and to think about, will you be responsible for that snake if your child grows up and leaves the home or doesn't want the snake anymore? And also think about how big the snake you choose is going to get, because that's also an issue for people, is that they'll get a snake. It'll be awesome when it's small. They'll get upwards of 8 feet long, and then they don't have anywhere to put it anymore. That leads many people to release non-native and invasive species out into our local ecosystems. So people will put their pet outside when they don't want it, becomes invasive, depending on if it's able to reproduce out in our environment and it's able to survive. And then we get really big problems, really negative impacts on our ecosystems. Those species can also spread parasites and diseases. So non-native and invasive animals that are coming from somewhere else also have other pathogens that our native snakes are not equipped to deal with. Okay, so the Burmese pythons even have spread parasites to some of our native snakes that actually can result in mortality of those species. So it's really, really important not to release pets out into the wild. And then if you do have a pet, or you know someone who has a pet that they cannot take care of, the FWC has an exotic pet amnesty program where you can be connected to someone who is equipped and able to care for those pets so that you don't end up releasing them out into our local ecosystems. All right, so our next species, also found in Sarasota County and every county in mainland Florida, is the dusky pygmy rattlesnake. This is a much smaller snake. It's around 12 to 24 inches in length, so 1 foot to 2 feet in length. They're small, but they're going to have a proportionally thick body. It's going to be a light to dark gray color. Sometimes it even looks a little bit periwinkle, purplish. And they have black blotches with that go down their back, and then they'll have that reddish orange line that goes down the length of their back as well, and ending in a very small rattle. They still have that triangular shaped, and this one, the head doesn't really give you so much of a triangular shape, but it's blocky. It's bigger and it's more distinct from its neck. They also do have that typical dark stripe from their eyes along the side of their head as well. The dusky pygmy rattlesnake is going to be found in lowlands, prairies, dry and wet forests, along the banks of canals and lakes, near swamps and marshes, and as well as suburban areas near habitat, so that they prefer. As we develop more and as we encroach more and more upon natural environments, those animals are displaced. They don't really have anywhere else to go, so they're going to make do with what they have. They're going to find preferred areas, and those may be in our suburban areas, in our neighborhoods, in our communities. This is our smallest venomous snake in Florida, and due to the size of its rattle, some have said that it sounds sort of like a buzzing insect. So you could miss that sound. You could confuse it with something else. It's not always going to be easy to say, oh, I hear a rattle. There might be a dusky pygmy rattlesnake nearby. For the dusky pygmy snake, there are going to be primarily 2 lookalikes that are most commonly confused with this rattlesnake. We've got our dusky pygmy rattlesnake on the left, and then 2 non-venomous species that can be lookalikes on the right. The top is the eastern hognose snake. We also have a southern hognose snake that looks different in coloration, but they both have this sort of upturned nose and a little bit wider of a head. They're going to use that scale that gives them that little piggy looking nose to help them burrow underground and beneath leaf litter. They are also a very small species of snake as well, and they can flatten out their head and body to give themselves a thicker look, to look more like a venomous species. Okay, so that can be pretty confusing. As well as the black racer. Juvenile black racers look like the picture on the bottom. So if you're familiar with the black racer, they are probably the most commonly seen species of non-venomous snake here in our communities, neighborhoods, parks. They are a long black snake with sort of a white under their chin and belly, and they are very widespread. They'll eat smaller prey animals, and they're really fast. They move really fast, as their name suggests. But when they're young, they look like this. They look like the picture on the bottom. They've got a completely different patterning. And many snakes will actually look very different when they are young as opposed to their coloration as adults. So the juvenile black racer, if you take a closer look, it's got a long a round thumb-shaped head, long slender body, not much distinction between the head and the neck, unlike our venomous species. And then take a look at its eye. Its big round pupil is something else that will tell you it's non-venomous. But if you ever see a lookalike where you're not really sure if it's venomous or non-venomous, you want to just stay away. Okay. You don't want to get closer and try to figure out or try to remember. Just stay away, whether it's a venomous or non-venomous species, that's your best choice. All right, our Florida cottonmouth, or water moccasin, as people may often refer to it, also found in Sarasota County and all counties in Florida, including some of our keys and islands around the state of Florida. It is named the cottonmouth because it assumes this defensive posture where it opens its mouth up towards the sky, and it's got that white, cottony looking mouth inside. So it's a great name to utilize because it actually is connected to an identification feature. So with our cottonmouths, they are pretty large, 2.5 to 4 feet in length, but they really, really have that characteristic stout body. In proportion to their length, they're going to look shorter and really, really thick. And they do have that characteristic blocky triangular head and the band from their eye down the side of their head. They do have sort of blotchy bands along and spots along the length of their body, but that's going to change and darken as they get older, and it kind of conceals that pattern. So they're going to sometimes, if you're far enough away, they'll just look uniformly dark. And then they're going to be found in our aquatic environments. They will enter the water. They'll spend plenty of time in the water. They're found in wetlands, waterways, urban and suburban bodies of water. So our stormwater ponds and lakes sometimes even, surrounding vegetation too. So they're not only limited to the water, they can be found in those surrounding areas. They have a very highly varied diet. So they're going to eat fish, amphibians, reptiles, including other snakes, birds, mammals, a lot of whatever they can find in their ecosystems and environments. And they're mostly nocturnal, but you can see them active during the day as well. Okay, so there's that typical defensive posture again. Cottonmouths will often sort of stand their ground. They will assume that defensive posture that communicates to animals that, hey, stay away from me, I'm venomous. And then on the picture on the right, we have a juvenile cottonmouth that is sometimes confused with copperheads when it's at this stage because of its coloration that sort of resembles the copperhead a little bit. But luckily, both are venomous. And so if you're confused on whether or not it's cottonmouth or a copperhead, you know to stay away from both of them. Another lookalike that is non-venomous is going to be our water snakes. So we have around 8 species of non-venomous water snakes that occur in Florida. They can be found in freshwater environments as well as brackish environments, and along mangroves and other environments with more salt in the water. They are really frequently confused with cottonmouths. So it can be really challenging to tell the difference between them. And then snakes like our southern or banded water snake, which is pictured on the bottom left, they will actually flatten out their head and body when they feel threatened because it makes them look more like a venomous species. So it can really be challenging if you're not really, really well practiced at distinguishing between venomous and non-venomous species. But here's a few tips to help you. So first thing that I like to look at is body. Cottonmouths are stout, as I mentioned. You see the picture on the right. That snake doesn't look very long, but it looks like thick, right? And then that defensive posture, of course, that cottonmouth. The snake on the left, the water snake, and other water snake species, they're going to be longer and more slender. They may be a thick, large snake, but their body is going to look longer than the cottonmouth. When it comes to the head, when they're not flattening their head out, they have that more thumb-shaped round head as well as those round pupils. And so you won't see that thick, blocky, triangular head. You won't see that dark eye band so much. And then as well, they won't have as much distinct difference between the width of their head and their neck like our cottonmouth does. Cottonmouths also often rest with their head lifted. And then sometimes if you're looking overhead at a snake, the cottonmouth, you won't be able to see their eyes on either side if you're looking from above, but the water snakes, you may be able to see their eyes sort of sticking out a little bit because their head is a lot more narrow when it's not flattened out. All right, let's get into our first elapid, our first and only elapid, which is our coral snake. Coral snakes are found in all counties in Florida, including some keys, so they are found here in Sarasota County. They're going to be around 20 to 30 inches in length. Take a look at this picture on the right, on the left. You can really see what I meant when I said that those characteristics that we mentioned for our pit vipers do not really apply to our elapid. They have got a long, slender body, a thumb-shaped head without much distinction between the head and the neck. They've got a shinier, smoother appearance, right? So they also have round pupils. So all of those characteristics are really not going to apply to the coral snake. Generally, their face or snout is going to start with the color black instead of starting with red or yellow. So generally, they'll start with the color black. That is one key identification feature to distinguish between coral snakes and some non-venomous lookalikes, is that coral snake's face will start with black. And then they've got those yellow and red and black rings throughout the length of their body. They'll inhabit a variety of wet and dry forests, scrublands, and developments near preferred habitats as well. They are part of the highly venomous elapid family, so the black mambas, inland taipans, sea snakes, cobras, kraits, and they're really secretive. So coral snakes are, people see them a lot less than some of our other pit vipers that are a little bit more active and conspicuous, but they are a lot more secretive. They're going to spend more time hiding under debris and in the ground. So you may have heard that there are some rhymes that people use to help them figure out if it is a coral snake or a non-venomous species. Those rhymes could be anywhere from red touching black, venom lack, red touching yellow, kill a fellow, to red touching black, safe for Jack, red touching yellow will kill a fellow. So they kind of rhyme, which helps, but when it comes down to it, you may not remember that rhyme and exactly how it goes. So sometimes it can be easier to just remember, oh, the face is black, it's a coral snake. But generally, when it comes to Florida specific coral snakes, they're going to follow those rhymes. As I mentioned before, there are other species of coral snakes in other parts of the country and the world that may be different. And then where it gets tricky is that there can be variations within individuals of our coral snake species here in Florida. So animals can be melanistic, which means that they have extra melanin. So they sometimes will be darker. If you've ever seen like the black fox, which is totally dark, black colored instead of having its usual red coloration and white and black. So that's an example of a melanistic animal. They can have albinism where they don't have melanin. They can have leucism where they lack other pigments. So this is not super, super common, but their coloration can be different. And especially if you look at this picture. So compare this one is quite easy to see, red touching yellow. This one, those red bands are not as easy to see. So I'll often show this picture to people when I play a venomous or non-venomous snake species identification game. And most of the time, people will not put this in the venomous category because they don't really see the red. So that is representative of what could happen in real life. You might not really see the red very clearly or easily. So here are some of our most common lookalikes, and they are both non-venomous. They're both pretty small snakes as well. So we've got the scarlet king snake, which is the top picture. And if you look closer, you can see that this snake's face starts with red. It does have some black on top, but mostly red. And then if you remember how the rhyme goes, red touching black, venom lack, red touching yellow will kill a fellow. This snake has red bands touching black. On the bottom, we have our scarlet snake. Also, face starting with the color red. And then again, red bands touching black. Okay, so now that we've gone through our venomous species, our 6 venomous species, let's do a quick little quiz to sort of see what you remember and see some of the characteristics that you remember. Think about looking at body length and shape, whether it's long and slender or thick and stout. Think about looking at the shape of the head. Is it thumb-shaped and round? Is it thick and blocky and triangular? Is there a lot of distinction between the head and the neck and body of the snake? You can look at the eyes if you can see if they have elliptical pupils or if they are round. So there's a few things that you can check to see. And let's get started. All right, first up, venomous or non-venomous. Take a look at the snake in this picture. And this is a great example of how you might actually see a snake. It's less likely that you're going to just see a snake perfectly sitting, completely identifiable and easy to see. So if you guessed non-venomous, you are correct. This is a species of a Nerodia or water snake, non-venomous. Take a look at the head, which is down in the bottom left of this picture. It's round. There's not really any distinction between the head and the neck of this snake. Its body is long and slender in comparison, or sort of proportionally long and slender. It does have keeled scales, so it looks textured. Some non-venomous species will have those keeled scales, so that's not only or always the only thing that you can use to identify. And one time I actually was kayaking and I was pushed by the current, ran right into a bush which had a long snake draped throughout it. And I quickly looked to see to make sure it wasn't a cottonmouth. I saw its long body. I saw its round head. I saw its lack of distinction between the head and the neck. So those things kind of immediately told me. And it turned out to be a green water snake, which was really cool to get to see. Okay, next up, venomous or non-venomous? What do we think? If you guessed venomous, you are correct. This is a venomous species. This is our cottonmouth. Take a look at the head. You notice that blocky triangular shape, that dark band along the side of the head. The snake doesn't look very shiny, but really it looks short, right? It looks kind of short and wide as opposed to long and slender. Okay, venomous or non-venomous? What do we think? So if you guessed non-venomous, you are correct. This is a non-venomous species of snake. Take a look at its length. It's very long and slender. Its head is round. It doesn't have any distinction really between its head and its neck. And then even its pupils, if you can see, its eyes are round, its pupils are a round shape. Okay, venomous or non-venomous? So this one is non-venomous. This is our juvenile black racer. Big round pupils, thumb-shaped, round head, slender body. Venomous or non-venomous? Venomous. This is our dusky pygmy rattlesnake, that smallest venomous snake here in Florida. You can see its keeled scales, its textured look. You can see its blocky sort of head, that distinction between the neck. This snake, you can kind of see the rattle in this picture, but because it's so small, it's going to be a little harder to see the snake's rattle. Okay, venomous or non-venomous? You guessed non-venomous, that is correct. This is a scarlet king snake. Take a look at the round pupil, the face that is starting with the color red. And then if you remember the rhyme, red touching black, venom black, red touching yellow, kill a fellow. So we've got red bands touching black on this species. Scarlet king snake, non-venomous. All right. So let's take a look at this species. What do we think? Venomous or non-venomous? Non-venomous. This is a scarlet snake. So this one is a little bit harder to see the head. You can't really tell whether it starts with black or red or not, or another color, but you can look at the bands and we can say red is touching black, venom lack. All right, venomous or non-venomous? Non-venomous. So this one's really tricky because you cannot really see the head, but I'm looking at this snake's long body. It doesn't look very thick and stout, and I don't see the head resting up like cottonmouth. Sometimes will rest with its head lifted. This is actually a brown water snake, so non-venomous. All right. So now that you've gotten a chance to sort of test your knowledge a little bit, let's shift gears to talking about snake encounters, snake bites, and how to prevent negative interactions as much as we can. So two things are important to think about when you're looking at snake encounters. The first one is, when are you most likely to encounter snakes? So warmer months from spring through fall, when humans are more active outdoors and snakes are more active outdoors. So remember, they are ectothermic. They need to use ambient heat sources to warm their body. So when it's warmer, they're going to be more active. Their metabolism is going, they may be mating or getting ready to mate. So they're going to be traveling across the landscape more. And then you can potentially see snakes at any time of day. As I mentioned, some species are going to be nocturnal, which means that they're more active during the nighttime. Some are going to be diurnal, which means they're more active during the day. And some will be crepuscular, which means that they're active at dawn and dusk. And they can change those behaviors based on the time of year. So if it's really, really hot outside, some snakes are going to choose to be more active when it's cooler, so at nighttime or at dawn and dusk. And at nighttime, we are particularly vulnerable because we can't see very well. So when we're out at night hiking or playing outside, it's harder for us to see if there's a snake in the area. Where are you most likely to encounter snakes? So the edges and border areas of different habitats, like the edge of a forest, the edge of a body of water, along the edges of trails. I've seen many snakes along the edges of trails or crossing, going across the trail from one side of their habitat to another. Anytime for me, I love to sort of step off to the side of the trail to look at flowers or plants or other animals. I always look first anytime I do that. And I always tell other people to do that too, because oftentimes you'll see a snake and they'll be all along the edge of a trail. And then when it comes to trails and roads and sidewalks, because those surfaces are going to absorb heat from the sun, they're a great place for snakes to bask. So that's why also you'll see snakes sometimes stretched along a trail, just relaxing, because they're basking. They're using some of that warmth that's being held in that ground. And then, so really anywhere else where snakes may be basking, so on top of rocks or logs. And then in rock crevices, beneath debris or piles of sticks and wood or leaf litter, firewood collections around the home, inside of or beneath logs or fallen trees or stumps, in tall grass or brush or palmetto thickets. And then in the branches of trees sometimes as well. And dark covered warm spaces that are in and around your home. So that's like crawl spaces, basements, sometimes even attics, beneath houses or sheds or other structures. And then areas frequented by rodents. Okay, so where there's rodents, there's going to be some snakes that want to eat them. So if you look at some of the things that all of those areas have in common, and it's going to be that they're sheltered, they're covered, they're a safe, warm space where that snake can stay concealed and protected. Because again, they are thinking about, they could be prey for another animal. They've got a long, slender body. We'll talk a little bit about that some more. So snakes feel quite vulnerable. They're limbless, they're soft-bodied, they're prey for a variety of animals. They're mostly ground dwelling. Those things all combine to put them at, greater risk. If they have an interaction with an animal, they could be killed. So they really want to stay safe and protected. And that's good for us because that means that when snakes feel us coming, so they're hearing, they can hear, but some species, their hearing is not really that great. but they can feel vibrations. They have their jaw placed on the ground and they can actually feel those vibrations and tell where things are coming from that way. So when they hear a human stomping along, they're gonna probably be gone before you even see them and you even knew that they were there. Some species, however, will stick around. They will freeze, they'll camouflage like our copperhead. They will sort of assume a defensive posture like the cottonmouth. So some species won't always go away. They'll kind of signal that, hey, stay away from me. Okay, but most of the time snakes want to get away. They want to escape. They don't really want to chase after us or initiate an attack. Trying to bite something brings their head, a vital part of their body, closer to potential danger. So it's really, it's the last resort. It's not an effective way to stay safe, to always be looking to bite, okay? So do not approach or attempt to touch, capture, kill, or pick up a snake. That is the first thing you want to remember and tell your children, tell kids in your lives, and tell other people you know. That is the first thing to know what you should do if you see a snake. Don't approach it. Don't corner it. Stay calm. Slowly back away from the snake. Stay far back and give the snake plenty of room to escape. If you are in the direction that it's going, get out of the way. If it has room to escape and doesn't feel cornered or threatened or like you are approaching and trying to grab that snake, most likely it will be able to get away without having a negative interaction with you. If you're out hiking and a snake is on a trail, do not step over it, do not walk past it, and don't walk around it. Okay, so if you are not able to walk a far distance around that snake, the first thing you want to do is really to hang back, to give it space and to see if it will go away on its own. If it doesn't do that, you're going to need to sort of find an alternate route so that you do not walk past close to the snake. Because again, remember, our eastern diamondback rattlesnake, for example, can strike 2/3 the length of its body. So you need to be far enough away that you are not putting yourself at risk by walking by or around that snake. You should also not, do sudden movements or run away or sort of startle the snake further. You want to keep your eyes on it, slowly and steadily back away and put distance in between you and the snake. So what do we want to talk about a little bit when it comes to snake bites? It is not as frequent or common as some people may think. Snakes are not always going to bite us. They're not looking to eat us. We are in Florida. We are way too large for the species that we have here. Snakes have to swallow their prey whole, so they cannot eat us. They're not looking to eat us. But when snakes are cornered or threatened, that's when they can become aggressive. Naturally, they're trying to protect themselves and to keep from being killed themselves. So biting is going to be the last resort. They're not looking to go after us or chase us down. Sometimes even people who are boating or frequenting aquatic environments, they'll talk about the snakes dropping down from the trees to try to get them. A lot of times those are actually non-venomous water snakes, not always, but most of the time non-venomous water snakes. And the reason why they're dropping down is because they're trying to get into the water. They feel like that's a place where they can hide and stay safe and stay concealed. And it just so happens that as you're moving along underneath of them, they try to drop into the water and you're there. So there's around 7,000 to 8,000 bites a year in the United States, and 5 of those generally are going to be fatal. Sometimes that can be because not getting treatment quick enough. Okay, so sometimes people will think that they're okay, that there's nothing wrong. They might think, oh, it wasn't a venomous species, and then they may not seek treatment fast enough. So that can be a reason for mortality. The mortality is low because we have treatments available that are going to be effective in sort of trying to help someone who has been bitten by a venomous snake. And that is if you get medical assistance immediately. Automobile accidents, lightning strikes, dog attacks, and spider bites, those can all cause more deaths and injuries annually than snakes do. Okay, so when you think about 7,000 to 8,000, it sounds like a lot, but if you compare that to all of the other things that cause mortality in people or cause severe injury, it is much smaller than you would really think. So when do people get bitten by snakes? Top of the list, attempting to chase, kill, pick up, handle, or catch snakes. They're going to strike quicker than your reaction. Okay, they're very fast. They are a big muscle. They've got way more muscles than us. They're very powerful and strong. And so those muscles allow them to react really quickly, to move really quickly. So if you are sticking your hand towards a snake, you're trying to kill it. People would often chop off the heads of venomous snakes. You're trying to do that and you're not immediately successful. You've just put yourself at significantly greater risk of being bitten because you are approaching and getting closer to that snake's mouth and body. So do not chase, kill, pick up, or handle, or catch snakes. And then, as I mentioned in the beginning of this presentation, snakes have an important role in our ecosystem. So we really don't want to be killing them, and we don't want to be mistaking venomous and non-venomous species for each other. Our snakes, deserve to be there, and they have a role in our ecosystem. Second up is some of our accidental things. So stepping over logs or placing your extremities into areas where they cannot be seen. So that's like if you're climbing trees, if you're rock climbing, you're reaching to hold on to something, you can't see what's up there. That's an opportunity potentially where you may not know that a snake is there. When you're stepping on over logs. So if you're hiking, if you're playing, and there's a log in your path, if you step over it, you can't see what's on the other side. So I recommend stepping on top of the log first so that you can get a look down on what's on the ground in front of you, and then step down because that gives you a better chance of making sure that there's nothing there that you can't see. As well, in environmental education, people often roll logs over to show kids all of the cool macroinvertebrates and small insects and animals that are underneath of that log. When you do that, instead of rolling a log away from you so that you can see what's underneath, you want to roll the log towards you because that allows anything underneath of that log to get out, to escape away from you rather than right towards you. Okay, so roll logs towards your body so that anything that's exposed can get away and not head right towards you. And then third on this list is where snakes are well camouflaged or if they remain frozen. So when people walk by a snake and they didn't even know it was there. I've done that before too. Many times actually, because sometimes when they freeze, they blend in and you don't know that they're there. So that's unfortunately a time where, it's not something that you're doing necessarily. It's accidental. You didn't know the snake was there. In the times that's happened to me, I was able to quickly move away and I was okay. So if that happens, move away, try to get distance in between you and the snake. If you have something like a hiking stick or a trekking pole that you can use as sort of a barrier in between your extremity and the snake, but do not ever strike or try to hit or poke at the snake. And then when it comes to those bites, estimates show that actually 20 to 25% of pit viper bites and 50% of coral snake bites can be dry bites. Dry bites means that the victim was not envenomated, so venom was not injected to them. And that's pretty great. It's good for us to know that sometimes even if bitten by a venomous snake, you may not be envenomated. However, you should never delay medical attention. It doesn't matter if you think that you're okay and nothing's happening. If you're not feeling any symptoms, go get medical attention. You do not want to delay. So what do you do if you're bitten? Get distance between you and the snake. Get to somewhere safe. Treat all snake bites as potentially venomous. Whether it's venomous or non-venomous, it's not pleasant to be bitten by a snake. You can get infections, allergic reactions. So venomous or not, treat it as a venomous bite. Go to the hospital, get immediate medical emergency attention. So call 911. Remain calm and motionless, minimize activity. If you are with someone who's been bitten or you're not alone, have someone help you stay calm and reassure you. Do not get up, run around, don't run back to your car, don't drive really fast and frantically. All those things are going to increase your circulation, which circulates that venom faster around your body and towards the heart. You want to keep your bitten extremity below the heart. So if bitten on the arm or hand or leg, keep that below your heart to decrease or rather have it take longer for that venom to reach the heart to circulate around the body. Remove jewelry, rings, or tight clothing around the area. And then if you have access to this, you can wash the area with warm, clean, soapy water. You can cover with a sterile dressing. That does not mean tightly wrapping the area. It means sort of like that gauze dressing to cover and keep extra dirt and things from getting into the wound. So what you do not want to do is you do not want to apply a tourniquet. You do not want to suck the venom out. You do not want to cut open or bleed out the wound. And you do not want to ingest medications, stimulants, alcohol, or caffeine. And you do not want to apply ice. All of the things that I just mentioned have been shown either to not help you or to actually harm you. Some of those things, like applying a tourniquet, applying ice, can actually result in the limb having to be amputated where it wouldn't have prior. Okay, so don't do any of those things. Your best option, the best choice is to remain calm, make sure you're away from the snake, immediately seek emergency medical attention. If it's possible, you can try to remember the size, color, shape, and pattern of the snake. You can try to take a picture, but you should never approach the snake or try to catch it or trap it to get that picture or to get a better look at it. And don't have someone who's with you do that either. That's just putting you at greater risk. It's also great to remember the time of the bite because that can be useful for medical professionals as well. Snakes, even when they're dead, some of them can have involuntary reactions that can result in you being envenomated. So really stay away from the snake and remain calm, get medical attention. So envenomation, again, that is when an individual actually receives venom, venom is injected into them. Anti-venin or anti-venom is our best treatment available. It is made from antibodies that are produced by horses or sheep. So as such, it can actually cause some allergic reactions in some people. So even though we have this amazing medical treatment available that saves so many lives and really reduces the likelihood of having to die from a snake bite, it's not something that you should take lightly. Being bitten by a venomous snake, even though there's treatment available, is not something to be taken lightly. It's much better to rely on preventative measures and snake safety. So when you are bitten by a snake and you go to the hospital, medical professionals will carefully monitor and observe symptoms. They'll support bodily functions if necessary. So making sure that you're still breathing, that you've got fluids, symptoms, and how long it takes for them to develop. Unfortunately, I can't give a specific number because it is going to be highly variable on many different things. It can vary depending on the type of snake or the venom injected, how much venom was injected, where the bite is located, how deep the bite was, if it's hit a vein or not. It can depend on the size of the individual. And then different venoms are going to act differently on our different body systems. And some snakes actually are going to have a combination of different types of venom. So the main types are going to be neurotoxins, which impact our nervous system and sort of the signals that our brain is sending, hemotoxins, which impact our blood or blood clotting ability as well, and cytotoxins, which impact our cells. So that means that sort of the cell death that happens, tissue death, if you've ever heard of like the necrotizing venom, which sort of kills off the tissues where the wound sort of opens and the tissue is sort of kind of eaten away, or muscle weakness or muscle destruction. So the destruction of the tissues of your muscles as well. The neurotoxins can be muscle weakness. So that can be muscles that are responsible for vital functions too. So coral snakes, their neurotoxic venom can actually take longer for the symptoms to develop. So that can lead people to think that, oh, everything's fine, I don't feel anything. You really do not want to wait ever. So as soon as you're bitten by a snake, immediately get medical attention. Don't wait. And then according to the CDC, some of the sort of initial symptoms that can accompany a venomous snake bite could be pain, though the bite could happen so fast that you may not see actually the bite wound and you may not feel it at first. Redness and swelling, nausea and vomiting, breathing and vision challenges, excess saliva and sweating, numbness or tingling around your face or limbs. So those are all some of the potential sort of initial symptoms that can be felt. Okay, so we talked about some, scary sounding possibilities. Again, remember that most snakes do not want to bite people, that the occurrence of venomous snake bites is fairly low in comparison to other things that happen in our daily lives. And most snakes are looking for an exit. They want to get away and they want to keep their bodies safe. So that said, how can you stay safe and how can you prevent negative interactions with snakes as much as possible? Top of my list is educate yourself, educate any children you have, any children or other people in your life. Help them and help yourself to know how to distinguish between our venomous and non-venomous species. So you're already watching this presentation. Hopefully this helps you do that. Having little identification guides. There's some really helpful, lightweight little guides that you can bring with you in a backpack if you're out. You can make a little card that has different venomous species on it so that you can remember. Just really educating yourself not only on our species, but behavior, where they can be found, and what to do in the case of being bitten or encountering a snake. That education really helps to stay safe, to prevent negative interactions, and then to appropriately handle any negative interactions. Never approach or handle wild snakes. It's threatening to them. They feel like they're going to be eaten. They perceive us as a larger animal that poses a threat to them. So biting is going to be a natural response to protect themselves. Of course, if they can't get away, because first they're going to try to get away, but biting, even if it's a non-venomous species, is a way that they might seek to protect themselves. So don't approach or handle wild snakes. Do not attempt to kill, chase, or capture wild snakes. And then when hiking, there's a few tips to remember. So wearing long pants and shoes or boots that cover your feet and ankles. I love to spend time outside barefoot, but if I'm going on a hike where I know that there are venomous species in the area, and if I'm going to be walking through brush or tall grass or just hiking along trails where I know I can see snakes, I will not go barefoot because I know that that increases my risk of being bitten. So wearing closed-toed shoes or boots that cover your feet and ankles can protect you, especially for some of our species like our coral snake, which has short fixed fangs, that are going to be less likely or less able to penetrate through those boots. Staying on trails or avoiding walking through areas with tall grass and brush that prevent you from seeing where you're going. That's a great tip because if you can see where you're walking, you're going to be much more likely to quickly see if there's a snake there. Stepping on top of logs rather than right over and rolling logs towards you. We talked about that. Using a trekking pole or a hiking stick to navigate through tall grass or brush. So when I'm hiking somewhere where I can't see the ground, I will put my trekking pole or hiking stick out first to sort of prod the area so that my trekking pole or my hiking stick is meeting any potential threats first as opposed to my feet. So that is one thing that you can do. However, I do not recommend poking at or hitting snakes with the stick. It is not a good idea. And again, those snakes can strike much quicker than you probably can react. So it's really just utilized to sort of prod through taller grass. And then you can also shuffle your feet, make noise when you're moving across the landscape, because that's going to send those vibrations across the ground that snakes can feel. And hopefully they'll be gone before you even get anywhere close to them. In and around your house, these are some important tips. So you want to keep your yard clear of wood and debris piles, abandoned vehicles, tools, garbage, turned over wheelbarrows, anywhere really where a snake can hide and where rodents can hide, because where there's rodents, that's also going to attract some snakes. Seal entry and exit holes and structural damage. So we know rodents can get into spaces that are really tiny. Those snakes can follow them in there as well. Even if they're not looking after a rodent, they still can enter into that structural damage or into those holes. So sealing up those areas, sealing up cracks and crevices that lead from outside to inside the home are a great way to sort of prevent snakes from entering the home as much as possible. Reduce sources of food, shelter, and water for rodents, of course. And if you would like to know how to do that, we have a Wild Sarasota presentation all about what to do about rodents here on YouTube. And then avoid crawl spaces and beneath porches, those kinds of areas where it's dark, it's hard to see, there's clutter, and it's sort of a sheltered space that snakes might be in. And if you do need to go into those areas, use light, prod around in there with something like a stick first to make sure that you're not putting yourself at risk first. All right, so we've covered a lot of information. Thank you so much for sticking with me. I really hope that you learned some valuable information here. Just so that you can see again, our 6 species of venomous snakes here in Florida. Florida cottonmouth, dusky pygmy rattlesnake in the top middle. Top right is our copperhead. Bottom left, eastern diamondback rattlesnake. Center on the bottom is the coral snake. Bottom right is our timber rattlesnake, okay? The timber rattlesnake and the copperhead, both on the far right, are the 2 species of venomous snakes that are not found in Sarasota County. If you'd like to learn more about Sarasota's snakes and other wildlife, you can visit our wildlife webpage by scanning the QR code on this screen. You can also learn more about invasive species with the QR code underneath of our wildlife webpage. We have an entire webinar that includes all of our non-venomous species of snakes too that are commonly seen in the area. And if you'd like to learn more about our ecosystems and wildlife and ecology, the Florida Master Naturalist Program is an excellent program. It's an adult education program developed by the University of Florida that really helps you get to know our ecosystems and how you can help protect them and identify common species. So it has 3 core modules, so you can learn about our upland systems, our freshwater systems, and coastal systems. And then there are several other shorter modules that teach you more specific information as well. Thank you very much for sticking with me. I hope you enjoyed this presentation and check back for more Wild Sarasota episodes.